I wanted to talk about premenstrual dysphoric disorder because not a lot of people know what it is. It's, I guess, a hormone condition. It's not like other hormone disorders which stem from a lack of hormones. In fact, there's normal amounts of hormones when they're tested. So it really gets underdiagnosed because a doctor will do like a hormone test and find out that all your hormones are normal, your thyroid's normal, like all those sorts of normal things. And they'll tell you there's nothing wrong with you. But there still could be. It really annoys me when I look up statistics on something like premenstrual dysphoric disorder and I find out that 10% of menstruating women actually have it, and that 50% of bipolar women have it, which makes a lot of sense because it's a sensitivity to either the estrogen or the progesterone hormone. So if your brain's sensitive to chemical changes, it makes sense that you'd be sensitive to a hormone as well. So I mean, normal people's cycles are about 4 weeks. Mine's 3 weeks. So I have a week of period and PMS, and then I have a week of, normal mood, and then I have a week of PMDD, and I call it PMDD week. It's horrendous. It is just completely debilitating. It's in those 7 days or 7 to 10 days that I have it, it is more terrifying than any of my mental illnesses combined. It's everything. It's like emotional, crying for no reason, just feeling sad 1 minute and kind of just all over the place. I literally just feel like I'm losing my mind, and it builds each day up until I get my period to the point where I'm completely suicidal the 3 days before my period. And then when I wake up, the next day, I go, oh, what the fuck was that about? And I understand it now when I go through it because I know what it is. And because of mood charting, actually, mood charting plug, you can see a mood chart that I developed myself on my Instagram. I'm more than happy to send it on to anyone that, wants to use it, or definitely create your own. Mood charting has changed my life. I always knew that something still wasn't right. So I had my bipolar diagnosis, but there was lots of loose ends that didn't really fit in that roller coaster. And then I realized, I had my bipolar roller coaster, which was quite big. And then I had this borderline kind of all over the place. And then I had this 3-week cycle. And I mean, a lot of the symptoms are very similar between lots of different illnesses. Like, lots of people think mania is very similar to anxiety, and it can be at times. And what I was experiencing during PMDD week was very kind of depressive, and when I was depressed, it sucked because I would be like depressed for about 8 months of the year. And then I would have this like 1 week every 3 weeks where I would just be like insanely more depressed. And that was like the highest suicide risk time for me. And I guess, how do you know that you have it? Well, that's why you have to mood chart, because you'll be able to see the connection with your cycle. If you're sensitive to the estrogen, it'll be the week after your period. If you're sensitive to progesterone, it'll be the week before your period. Now, normally, I guess the common treatments is to take an antidepressant and to go on the pill, because what the doctors seem to tell you is your estrogen's higher in the beginning of the month, and then your progesterone spikes in the second half of the month, and they like cross over. So by going on the pill, it sort of evens them out. Well, the trouble is with being bipolar, you can't be on antidepressants, and I guess going on the pill for me, all it did was add more hormone, which meant I was unstable for like all of the month. And I actually had a hard time convincing doctors of that because they didn't believe me that it made it worse. And I'm like, no, well, like the 8 pills that we've tried, they all made it worse. I was more of a crazy psycho bitch. And PMDD week is like a week where I'm like a fucking, I mean, I don't hurt other people. I've never been like outwardly aggressive. It's more internal. So I would just be like an emotional, suicidal, depressed, bipolar mess. Like, I would just be this tornado of just everything. And it's, people say, oh, it's just in your head. Well, no, it's not just in my head. This is actually the most biological component of my mental illness. Like for the last sort of 3-4 days of PMDD week, I can't get out of bed. And that's not a choice that I'm making to stay in bed. I'm that fatigued, because fatigue is one of the symptoms. I literally am in and out of consciousness for the last 3 days because I'm just so exhausted. Like my body is just all fucking over the place. I feel hot. I feel like I'm forgetting the word now. Can't believe I forget this. My mom used to go on about it all the time. Anyway, you know what older women get, and they get like the hot flashes and stuff like that. That's how I felt. I was like, something is wrong. My body is just all types of fucked up. And then my mind's kind of like following suit. So getting to the bottom of that has been absolutely huge in the last 3 months. And none of the pills were working. Nothing was working for it. And I was pretty much looking to have to get my ovaries taken out because, you know, it was that detrimental to my health, to my life. It was uncontrollable. Like, to just 1 week out of every 3 weeks to just be so determined to kill yourself. It was like, I can't live like that. I can't work like that. I can't do that. And that was the worst time to trigger my borderline, because it was when I was the weakest. So people, if, you know, they were around me during that period, my borderline would be like on hypersensitivity alert because I was feeling so emotional and so shit anyway. So I guess I went to my doctors and I said, look, I'm willing to try like one more pill and see how it goes. And I think it's been okay so far. They generally take, you know, a few months to kind of be fully effective. This was a pill that I was on actually during my late teens, early 20s, and I stayed on it for a while because it was the only pill my boyfriends told me didn't make me a crazy psycho bitch. And I fully understand why they were making me a crazy psycho bitch, because of this premenstrual thing. And I'm a huge advocate for speaking about it because I think it's just, nobody knows about it. I wouldn't have known what to look for, you know, except I could see this pattern and I was determined to find out what it was. So I did my research, and then when I found out it was really prevalent, I thought, why was this not one of the first things my doctors had mentioned? You know, I'm bipolar, and 50% of bipolar women, so like 1 in 2 bipolar women have it. So why is everyone with bipolar not asked about it? Like every woman with bipolar, why are we not told that this could be something really important to us? Because there's no way I would have achieved the level of stability I have now without dealing with that, without figuring out what that was. And I don't understand why people don't talk about stuff like that. I mean, if you have PMDD, like all I can do is tell you what it's like when I experience it. But seriously, if you're a bipolar woman and you think that something is going on, that something's kind of not right, Google PMDD, because, you know, it could change your life if you get onto the right kind of treatment, you know. And for everyone else, mood chart. I can't stress enough. I mean, I don't promote anything I don't believe in, and I strongly believe in mood charting, because I can take this mood chart every day. I mark sort of my mood, and you know, I've got a really simple one on my Instagram, and I think keeping just as tabs, you know, you sort of forget, like when you go to your doctor's appointment, they ask you, oh, how have you been feeling? You kind of just summarize how you've been feeling the whole time. But when you can actually see it going up and down, 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 up, up, and things like that on your mood chart, it really opens your eyes to kind of the particulars of your illness. It allowed me to understand that I have seasonal affective bipolar, which means every year in September I start going up because it's spring and summer, and then I go down in winter. It allowed me to know that, you know, when I was living in Melbourne, that was absolutely horrific for me because it's fucking shit weather all the time. And when I was living in Germany, the same thing. So I now know that I have to live in a relatively sunny, relatively sort of limited winter area, and that's just a choice and a sacrifice that I'm going to have to make for my mental health, because that's the only way I'm going to be happy. And I would not have recently been diagnosed with all 5 of my mental illnesses unless I had mood charted, unless I had been able to tell my doctors, these are the patterns that I'm seeing, and they could look at those patterns too, and then I could separate my bipolar symptoms from my anxiety, from my PMDD, I figured out the seasonal affective. I could really separate these, and that allowed me to treat them all individually, which meant rather than trying to find one treatment to treat all the symptoms, which never worked, I could actually go, okay, well, my bipolar's actually been under control for a couple of years. It's been this PMDD and borderline and all of these other things going on that have been giving me this instability. So I really recommend mood charting to anyone. I think it's super, super important. Take a look at the mood chart that I've got on my Instagram. Otherwise, create your own. I mean, everyone has their own lifestyle, and I put on mine some important things to note, like when I do caffeine, when I do, if I do drugs or alcohol, if I have suicidal thoughts, because sometimes, it's not just going, oh, I feel up or oh, I feel down. There's different types of up or down, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. I remember I had to do a what's my life like? Is it sort of down and up, or what is it predominantly? And I remember in the psych ward, I got the whiteboard marker, and on the whiteboard I was just like, and the psychologist laughed, and she was like, it's so funny because I know that that's your life, Jess. It is just all over the place and just a mess and up and down. And she's like, let's try and put some less squiggles and put some more sort of stability and straight lines in there. And that's what mood charting has allowed me to do. So yeah, look up PMDD and start mood charting.